A man can spend an entire lifetime believing he was a good husband and still realize at the very end that he missed the most important part of the marriage. For 41 years, I believed I was doing everything right. I worked hard, I provided for my family, I built a stable life for the woman I loved. From the outside, our marriage looked strong, the kind of life many people spend years trying to build. But near the end of her life, my wife said something to me that changed the way I see those 41 years forever. Not a long speech, not a dramatic confrontation, just one quiet sentence. And somehow, those few words forced me to see the truth about my entire life. Because sometimes the biggest mistakes in a marriage are not the obvious ones. They're not betrayals or loud arguments. They're the small moments we postpone, the conversations we rush through, the evenings we promise to enjoy later. And the dangerous thing about that kind of mistake is that it grows silently, year after year, until one day you realize the life you were preparing to enjoy has already passed. That's exactly what happened to me. My wife and I shared the same home for more than 4 decades. We raised children together, we built routines. We survived difficult years and celebrated good ones. But near the end of her life, she said something so simple and so devastating that it forced me to confront a truth I had been avoiding for decades. How can two people live together for 41 years and still feel distant? How can someone be physically present every day, yet emotionally absent for most of a lifetime? And why do so many people only realize this mistake when it's already too late to fix it? To understand the answer to those questions, we need to go back to the beginning of my marriage, because the truth didn't appear all at once. It revealed itself slowly over the course of 41 years.
I was married to my wife for 41 years. And for most of that time, I believed I was a good husband. Not perfect, but good enough. I worked hard, I paid the bills, I made sure our home was stable. From the outside, our life looked like what people would call a successful marriage. But there is something I understand now that I didn't understand back then. Providing a life is not the same as being present in it. My wife and I met when we were young. She had a quiet warmth about her, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. When she smiled, it made people feel safe. In the beginning, everything felt simple. We didn't have much money, but we had plans. Long conversations late at night, dreams about the future. The kind of dreams young couples make when life still feels wide open. I remember promising her that one day we would travel together, that once things were more stable, we would slow down and enjoy life. But stability has a strange way of moving further away the closer you think you are to it. First, there was the job I needed to keep, then the promotion I needed to secure, then the house we wanted to buy, then the children. And before I realized it, life had turned into a long list of responsibilities that never really ended. My days followed a routine that felt important at the time. Wake up early, go to work, solve problems, come home tired, eat dinner, sleep, repeat. I told myself that everything I was doing was for my family, and in many ways it was. But somewhere in the middle of all those years, something subtle started to change. My wife would sometimes try to talk to me about things that didn't seem urgent to me. A walk she wanted to take, a small trip she wanted us to plan, an evening where she just wanted to sit and talk. And most of the time, my answer was the same. Maybe this weekend. Maybe when things slow down. Maybe later. Later became a word I used often. At the time, it sounded responsible, practical, temporary. But what I didn't realize was that every later was slowly becoming a wall between us. My wife didn't argue much. She wasn't the type of person who raised her voice or demanded attention. Instead, she adjusted. She stopped asking as often. She stopped interrupting my routines. She learned how to live around the version of me that was always busy, always tired, always planning for a future that never seemed to arrive. And because there were no big fights, no dramatic moments, I assumed everything was fine. That's the dangerous thing about quiet distance. It grows slowly, so slowly that you barely notice it while it's happening. Years passed like that, 41 of them. A lifetime of shared space, shared responsibilities, shared routines, but not nearly as many shared moments as there should have been. And I didn't truly understand what that meant until the day my wife said something to me that I will never forget. Something she told me shortly before she died. Words so simple and yet so devastating that they forced me to see my entire life differently. Words that made me realize something painful. I hadn't lost my wife in a single moment. I had been losing her, little by little, for decades.
After my wife died, the house became unbearably quiet. For 41 years, there had always been small sounds in the background of my life. The sound of dishes in the kitchen, the hum of the vacuum cleaner, the soft rhythm of her footsteps moving through the hallway. Now, there was nothing, just silence. At first, I tried to stay busy. That had always been my strategy. Work harder, fill the hours, don't sit still long enough for uncomfortable thoughts to catch you. But grief doesn't work that way. It waits, and eventually it catches up. One afternoon, I opened an old drawer in our bedroom. Inside were photo albums we hadn't looked at in years. I sat on the edge of the bed and started flipping through the pages. There we were at 25, smiling at a cheap camera during our honeymoon. There we were at 32, holding our first child. There we were in the backyard years later, standing next to a grill while friends laughed around us. Looking at those photos felt like watching a movie about someone else's life, because the man in those pictures looked happy, present, alive. But the truth is, I barely remember many of those moments, not clearly, because during those years, my mind was always somewhere else, always planning, always solving problems, always preparing for the future. And suddenly, the realization hit me with a force I wasn't ready for. I hadn't lost my wife only to illness. In many ways, I had been losing her slowly for decades, not because I didn't love her, but because I never truly stopped long enough to live beside her. I thought providing was enough. I thought responsibility was love. But love isn't just about building a life for someone. It's about being inside that life with them, fully, presently, without always looking ahead to what comes next. And the most painful part? She knew it. That's why her final words were so simple and so devastating. You were never really here. For months after she passed away, I replayed those words over and over in my mind. At first, they felt like regret, but slowly they began to feel like something else, a lesson, a truth that came too late for the two of us, but maybe not too late for someone listening to this right now. Because if there's one thing I understand now, it's this. You don't lose life all at once. You lose it in small postponements. One conversation you rush through. One dinner where your mind is somewhere else. One weekend you cancel because something important came up. It never feels like a big mistake in the moment. But 41 years later, you realize those small moments were the life you thought you were protecting, and they are gone.
If I could go back 40 years, I wouldn't work less because work is bad. I would work less because life is short. I would listen longer when she talked. I would sit beside her without checking the clock. I would say yes to the small trips she suggested. I would laugh more at the dinner table instead of worrying about the next morning. And most importantly, I would be there, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, completely. Because the truth I discovered too late is painfully simple. The future we keep preparing for eventually becomes the past we can't change. And when the person you love is suddenly gone, you would give anything for one ordinary evening you once considered unimportant. One more quiet dinner, one more walk, one more conversation where you were fully present. But time doesn't give refunds. That's why I'm telling you this now, not to make you feel guilty, but to wake you up before life quietly moves past you the way it moved past me. So let me ask you something. When the people you love think about you, do they feel that you're really there? Or are you always somewhere else, thinking about tomorrow, preparing for next week, chasing something that never seems to arrive? If my story made you stop and think even for a moment, tell me in the comments. What is one moment in your life right now that you don't want to miss? Sometimes the simple act of saying it out loud is the first step to changing how we live. And if this story touched something deeper in you, there is another video on this channel you should watch next. It's called I'm 91. I realized this 10 years too late. Don't repeat my mistake. That story reveals another truth about life that many people only understand when it's almost too late. So watch it next. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes one honest story is enough to change how someone lives the rest of their life.